application you're reading?
1017 Ashton Avenue.
Had 4 children that were adopted. Each one of those children, they got around $1,000. So the primary source of income when they were living in Cal City was the $4,000.
Trezell explains it is easier and more hygienic to sit down when he pees.
Before we get into day 3 of the trial of Trezell and Jackie West, let's talk about opening statements. Now, the judge allowed for the pool reporters' videos to be in there so they could record opening statements. And what a study it represents, the amazing case against the Wests, the adoptive parents of Orrin and Orson West, still missing 3- and 4-year-old boys. What a study it is between their defense attorney versus their prosecuting attorney. Whoa, boy.
As well, their bodies have never been found. Now, they were adopted back in April of 2019. That's a photo you see up in the middle. That's actually the adoption ceremony. You can see the family of Trezell West there to the left in the yellow. That's Wanda West. She'll be testifying in this case. It's the mother of Trezell West. You also see Jacqueline Trezell, and they're holding Orrin and Orson. Ultimately, you'll hear testimony in this case that the primary source of income that the Wests had during this time was from money they received from the state due to adoption. They actually had 4 children that were adopted. Each one of those children, they got around $1,000. So the primary source of income when they were living in Cal City was the $4,000 they were receiving for adopting these children from the state of California.
Prosecutor Eric Smith, during his opening statements, he laid out a bang-up case. He talked about witness after witness after witness, security video, surveillance video, the activities of Trezell and Jackie when they reported Orrin and Orson missing, and afterwards and before.
The names of the other children you see there, Devin, Damien, and also Adrian and Aiden. Those are the biological children of the West. This is some photos from Bakersfield. They did live in Bakersfield back prior to moving to Cal City. I can see them at the park. That's a family photo, all 6 kids. To the right, you can see them in their Halloween costume. These photos are from early 2020 and in 2019. They lived on Lotus Lane. They had an apartment there, apartment number 116. They actually all lived there, all 8 of them. And in the apartment to the other side of that same apartment building, they're in groups of 8 apartments per, was Jacqueline's mother, Maria Martinez, who will be testifying in this case as well. Sometime in May, they opened escrow on a house in California City, and then in September, that escrow closed, and they began to move to California City. That is a photo of that residence that they lived at, 10717 Aspen Way. You'll see a lot of photos of that home, body-worn camera of the inside of that home. You'll hear about DNA tests of bedding from that home, of diapers from that home, but that is the home of the Wests in California City. Also to the right, you can see that is their Chevy van. You'll see that in a lot of surveillance footage. You will see that in photos from when crime scene analysts went through the vehicle. Now the case itself, just to kind of help you understand the evidence and how it will proceed in this case, it'll start with December 21st and then move back. December 21st is the day that they reported Orrin and Orson were missing. And from there, that's when the police began their investigation, and what they learned during that investigation and talking with the kids led them to move all the way back to September of 2020. But initially, when it was first reported by Trezell and Jacqueline, was December 21st of 2020.
By the time we get to day 3, you're going to hear about witnesses from the backyard neighbor behind the West home in California City on Aspen Avenue. You will hear so much data against them that just makes their story fall apart. Maybe that's why their defense attorney, Mr. Hennessy, has to bring up stuff like Trezell sitting down to urinate. But I think what Prosecutor Eric Smith brought up is really the crux of it all, when he said that California paid Trezell and Jackie about $1,000 apiece to adopt children, to foster children and ultimately adopt them. When I heard that, it's like seeing children with dollar signs on their heads. Is that how Trezell and Jackie thought of their kids? In these opening statements, I just want you to pay attention to the way the prosecutor Smith lays things out, plays videos. You'll hear Trezell's 911 call.
911 is the location you're looking for. 10717 Ashton Avenue. House. Oh, I was wondering, did anybody call in, they found some children or something? It was like, my sons, I can't find them. They were in the backyard earlier, and all of a sudden, I can't find them. I'll search property, I can't find them. They're all right.
No, how long have they been gone for?
It's too dark outside. I don't know. I can't
When was the last time you saw them?
I was outside getting wood from the lot next door, so I saw them about 20 minutes ago maybe, but they outside playing around in the yard. 3 and 4.
What sort of clothing were they wearing?
So the youngest was wearing black sweater, black sweatpants, and the oldest was wearing black sweater, black shirt, black sweater, long sleeve sweater, and some gray sweatpants.
That's the initial call that was received. It came in at 17:41 hours. That translates to 5:41 p.m. Officers were dispatched at 17:46 or 5:46 p.m. They were on scene at 17:48, which is 5:48. The officers that responded were Lieutenant Hightower, Officer Brian Hansen, Officer Anthony Cabriolas, Officer Joshua Flores from the California City Police Department. They all began to search for Orrin and Orson.
What are their names?
Orrin and Orson.
Which one's the 3-0?
I'm sorry, say it again?
The 3-0, which is his name?
The 3-year-old, he's Orson.
O-R-S-O-N?
Yes, ma'am.
And 4-0?
Orrin.
O-R-O-N?
Yes, O-R-R-I-N.
Okay.
R-R-I-N. Okay.
So that's who they were searching for. They received this information from Trezell. They show up on scene. They know they're looking for a 3-year-old and a 4-year-old. Now, just to give a sense of kind of what we're looking at, this is in the area of the home at 10717 Aspen Avenue. The area he's speaking about, playing in the backyard, you can see it here, and there is actually a fence in the upper northeast corner of that yard. And that'll become relevant as we go through this. Let me move this, I apologize. There's a fence in the upper northeast corner. That'll become relevant because that's where Trezell West is saying Orrin and Orson, a 3- and a 4-year-old, exited late that evening from a cement slab on the backyard. So police came, they began to search the home, they began to search the lot next to it, and there was no sign of Orrin and Orson. As I was saying, there is camera footage from a house to the west. This is the footage, and you're going to see a lot of it. You're going to see hours of it. But this is the footage from the house that's at 10649 Aspen Avenue. This is the west residence off to the east of the home. This is when police actually show up. That's Brian Hansen, and you can see Jacqueline and Trezell as they come to approach. So that's the police. They come, they hear what they have to say. They begin to look for Orrin and Orson. They look in the neighborhood. They look in the house. They look in the yards next door. And there was no signs of them anywhere. They got assistance from local civilians. They got assistance from the Kern County Sheriff Department Search and Rescue. To the right of that slide, you can actually see the flight path that the CHP helicopter used as it did circles in the sky, further and further away from the home, looking for Orrin and Orson all the way into the desert. And there was no sight of them. There was agencies from all over that were assisting, people all over that were assisting. They had to call CPS. This is from a CPS referral. There's so many things going on. There's even miscommunication that go on. You'll see in this, and this will be evidence in this case, that there's mention that there is video footage of the two children walking down the street. There's no footage of them ever walking down the street. You'll hear from officers that combed for surveillance footage. At no point was any footage found that had Orrin and Orson walking down the street. The video I just talked about, the house to the west. Again, we're going to see a lot of it. See that there is no cars that drive up, no people that walk up to that home, nobody that could come and abduct Orrin and Orson, and there is no footage showing them walking away from the home.
How calm Trezell sounds. Wondering if anyone reported any kids missing. The whole story as it's laid out. You'll hear calls from Jackie trying to encourage her son to lie. You know, I know some things have been said, like a master class in gaslighting to her oldest biological son. You can hear Trezell on the call too. A master's in gaslighting saying, well, I know some things have been said. We're really trying to get you guys back, but I know some things have been said and we're trying to fix it. Some things have been said that weren't true. This is after their children told the truth. These boys told police the truth about not seeing their adoptive brothers, Orrin and Orson West, weeks before, months before they were reported missing December 21st, 2020.
City police, that when they were out there that night, they went to the neighbor. They tried to look through their surveillance footage. They went in the area looking for other people that had any camera footage. Just want to play this next portion. This is initially kind of the information they were getting from Trezell.
There, you're right there in the corner, but you're back facing the back of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You just throw the wood in this area.
Here, that's a little bit of I was the graphic.
Okay. So there, you're right there. You throw the wood over, and then when did you enter back from the fence?
Yeah, I was going in and out, in and out, in and out.
Okay. Now, when the last time you came in, did you try to lock it?
No, the last time I was in to go check to see if I was going to move away from the fireplace. I was starting to fire. So it didn't all look like we were close. I did close it to like it was close and the dogs was there. So when I came out, it was already open. So I'm assuming that.
Now, what's going to become important in this case is details. Things that are said and things that don't ring true based on the evidence in this case. You heard Trezell said that he left the gate open or closed it to the point where his dogs wouldn't get out. But then when he went out, the gate was open. Well, video pictures from that night, you can see when first responding officers came, the gate was actually closed. They ultimately asked Trezell, who closed the gate? He said, I didn't, Jacqueline did. They asked Jacqueline who closed the gate. She said, I didn't, he did. And again, they're starting to see inconsistencies in what they're saying, what Trezell is saying, what Jacqueline is saying. You'll see that in the evidence in this case. They also look at the gate itself because he said he closed it enough to where his dogs couldn't get out. But when he came out, it was open. So they tested that gate to see how hard it was to open.
We'll start now. Go ahead, recording.
Again, these are 3- and 4-year-old that are supposedly opening the gate. You just saw that it took a grown man some effort to even open. So again, they're noting inconsistencies in what Trezell is saying, in what Jacqueline is saying to them. They were said to be on the cement slab. There was drawing with some chalk. They did see chalk on a cement slab, but Officer Hansen also noted that there was no children's footprints, anything consistent with children's footprints in the dirt. He did see footprints consistent with an adult, but nothing consistent with a child walking through the dirt that was between the cement slab and the gate that led out to the field. This is just a kind of overview of the surveillance footage that they either viewed that night or were able to recover in the following days. Jesse Dobbins, he will be testifying in this case. He lives across the street at the time. He had a Nest camera on the front of his house. He didn't have the full service with Nest, but he had a camera. And that camera caught some activations that night. And this will become important as it relates to the timing of it. There was an activation at 5:12, at 5:38, and at 5:51. Now, Mr. Dobbins, like I said, lives directly across the street from the West residence. And so his Nest camera looks out across the street, somewhat to the yard to the right, but a lot of the house of the West. You will see based on the surveillance footage that 5:12 is consistent with the time that Trezell was out getting wood from the yard next to it. 5:38 is consistent with the time frame of when Trezell returned from searching for the kids. 5:51 is consistent when law enforcement arrived on scene. There is no activation for any other movement based on what Jesse Dobbins will testify to. The house that is to the west, again, this is 10649. Put a circle around it, but this is that evening. You'll have to do math when we go through it, but it's 57 minutes slow. So this is at approximately 5:09. And you'll see this up in the corner. This is the area with the fence. I'll use that area. You can see an individual pulling items in and out of the yard through the fence. So Trezell West was outside pulling wood in and out through the fence. At some time around 16:20 hours or 5:17 p.m. in real time, that's the last time when Trezell went into the house. That's the time frame he said that he last saw the children. When he returned a short time later, they were gone. That's where you're going to hear Mr. West say in this case. After searching for approximately 10 minutes in the home, you will see that he enters his van and begins to drive around the area. At about 6 minutes later, he returns from driving, goes in the house, and that's when the call is made that you heard earlier. There's also footage from a neighbor that lived to the northeast area on Rome Beauty Drive. Mr. Robert Avalar, he will be testifying in this case. That's footage from his home. It looks out towards the desert area, which is near the end of Aspen Avenue. He said that evening, you can see a picture of him to the left. This is Mr. Avalar here. He was outside. He did not see any children walking into the desert. There's also footage that was recovered from 108th Street. It's a white rectangle where showing the coverage of a Ring camera. That's Mr. Trezell West's van driving around the neighborhood. Now again, it's the inconsistencies which lead the officers to investigate, which keeps them talking to Jacqueline and Trezell West. They searched the backyard. This is another look of the backyard facing the home. And based on some statements by Jacqueline, they actually take a cadaver dog out into the backyard. And you can see the dog there, that's Sadie. She does note that there is something there, but what her handler says is it was confused interest. But nonetheless, based on what Jacqueline said to them, a cadaver dog was taken out there and had some notification based on what that dog smelled. Now the FBI went through that yard, went through the dirt, dug, all those things. No bones were ever found, no body parts were ever found, but the dog did alert or have confused interest at that location. Now what truly began the investigation, you'll hear this through Officer Hansen and also the other 4 children of Jacqueline and Trezell. When they were spoken to the early morning hours of December 22nd, 2020, it's what they said that led to the investigation. To your left, that's Adrian. That's the oldest biological son of Jacqueline and Trezell. He was 10 at the time. He was asked specifically about December 19th, because that's when they had gone to Wanda West's house, the grandmother's house. They were not home the evening that Jacqueline and Trezell reported Orrin and Orson missing. They were actually in Bakersfield visiting family members. So they were asked, were Orrin and Orson with you when you came to Wanda West's house in Bakersfield December 19th? Adrian said no. He was interviewed multiple times. You'll hear this through Sonia Barton and also Adrian, that his mother had told him that Orson and Orrin were over at his grandmother's, or Maria Martinez. He told them that Orrin and Orson had left before September, that they went to grandmother's house a couple days after we moved to California City. So again, they're getting a sense of not only were they not in the van on December 19th, that they hadn't been in the home in California City also. To the right, that is Aiden, another biological son of Jacqueline and Trezell. He was asked who was in the car on the trip to Bakersfield December 19th. He said his brothers. And you'll hear evidence when that was clarified. By brothers, who do you mean? Devin, Damian, and Adrian. Again, this is Aiden stating that Orrin and Orson were not in the vehicle on that trip December 19th. He was asked why Orrin and Orson didn't move to the house. And evidence will show in this case, he said because they cry a lot. And that his mom and dad said they went to the place where they used to live. Again, the investigators are hearing this from not just one, but two children now. That they were not in the home in California City and that they had been taken somewhere else. Moving on to Damian and Devin. Damian, very young at the time, but he was asked, did they move to the house? He said yes, but then they left. They were there only a little day, only one day. So again, Orrin and Orson were at California City, but only for one day, and then they were gone. So at this point, there's three children of Jacqueline and Trezell saying that Orrin and Orson were at California City only for a short period of time, or not at all. Moving on to Devin. He was asked, when's the last time he saw Orrin and Orson? He said at the apartment. Again, the apartment's in Bakersfield, not in California City. Asked if Orrin had gone somewhere else, he said, Orrin went somewhere else. He went to mom's grandma. So again, four children of Jacqueline and Trezell, all four said that they were not with them when they went December 19th, and they hadn't even been with them in California City. This is a Facebook post that you will see related to Jacqueline West. This is the day after, I'll go back, the day after these interviews of the four boys. The next day, or that same day, they were informed essentially what Adrian, Aiden, Devin, and Damian had said. And this is a message that she sent to Wanda West, who had contact with the boys. Jacqueline said, please tell them we love them and miss them. And she also said, the boys need to ask for a lawyer if they want to talk to them again. I don't want them twisting whatever they are saying. So the officers take that information September 19th. They began to look through the footage. They began to look at that van to see, can we see if any kids are getting in? Can we see if 4 are getting in? Can we see if 6 are getting in? What can we see? That's footage, kind of a screenshot of the footage from the home. You can see on December 19th at 11:35 plus 57 minutes, that's when people enter that van and drive to Bakersfield. Ultimately, the question will be up for you as jurors, how many children entered that van that day. Return time, 15:44 or 3:44 plus 57 minutes. Again, that's the return of Jacqueline and Trezell to the home that day. The total trip time was 5 hours and 9 minutes. Now, you'll hear testimony about that trip, where they went. They went to a home on Potomac, 1109 Potomac. That's Wanda and Philip West's home. And from there, they went to Strata Credit Union, which is on Truxton and South 8th Street. They then took Wanda home because she had gone with them to Strata. They went to a gas station and to Superior Grocers before they went home. So that's just kind of a list of all the places they went. At none of those places, on any of the surveillance footage, were Orrin and Orson ever seen. You'll hear from Wanda. She'll say she didn't hear the kids in the car. She didn't see them. She didn't necessarily look for them, but she didn't see them in the car. So Wanda West, who got in at the home at 1109 Potomac, all the way to Strata Credit Union, all the way back, at no point being in the car did she hear Orrin, did she hear Orson, or did she see any evidence of them in the car. This is that van. I circled it going to Strata Credit Union, again, Truxton and South H. This is Jacqueline and Trezell at the Gasco. That's at East California and Mount Vernon. Again, no sign of the children. December 19th, this is Superior Grocers. That's on Union and East California. I circled that Chevy van. It's quite recognizable, the van itself. We'll watch the video from that. It's there for about 20 minutes. At no point does Orrin and Orson ever exit that van, or are they seen. Now moving forward to December 28th. At that point, the oldest son of Jacqueline and Trezell is re-interviewed by Sonia Barton. Who is Sonia Barton? She works for CPS. She's not a law enforcement officer. She interviews children. That's what she does. But on that date, she speaks to Adrian. That's a screenshot of him there sitting on the couch, December 28th of 2020. On that date, he told Sonia Barton that while they were still living at the apartment in Bakersfield, he heard noises in the night coming from Orrin. The first person to find Orrin in the morning was his parents. What he saw was Orrin. His color was fading. There was throw up coming out of his nose. And ultimately, he died at the apartment there on in Lotus Lane in Bakersfield. He told Sonia Barton, and also later in his testimony, that Trezell and Jacqueline did not call for any medical care for Orrin. Trezell went to grab something that looked like some form of medical device, maybe a stethoscope, but ultimately they didn't discuss getting medical care for Orrin. They let him die. What they did is they discussed keeping it a secret. Adrian, both in his interview and ultimately in later testimony, they asked him, that being Jacqueline and Trezell, if they should tell somebody or keep it a secret. And what you'll hear testimony is, through Adrian, is that he knew if they told somebody, they would be taken away from their parents. Now, as for Orson, again, this is based on what you'll hear in evidence in this case on Adrian's prior statement and testimony. Orson was in California City for about 4 days. At some point, Adrian heard a loud thud in the night. The day prior to hearing the thud, Orson was there. The day after the loud thud, Orson was gone, and he hasn't seen him since. He believed that Orson was taken back to his grandma's. Now again, the time frame of that interview with Sonia Barton, that's December 28th. This is a call that was heard between Jacqueline, Trezell, and Adrian about 1 week later.
We're trying really, really hard to get their back. We really are. You know, but some things were said, and we just got to prove to them that it's not true, you know? And Liz, I just want you to know, you don't have to talk to anybody if you don't want to, okay? I don't want nobody to tell you what to say, nothing like that. No. You don't have to talk to nobody. I know they've been asking you a lot of questions, but if you don't want to talk to them, you don't have to, baby.
And as I said before, those 4 boys will be coming in to testify in this case. But that's their mother, Adrian's mother, about 1 week after he told them, the police, what had happened at the apartment in Bakersfield, trying to get him not to talk. Now, again, based on the information that they received, the officers began to go back and see if they can interview anyone that did see Orrin or Orson. They talked to the realtor, Robert Dees. He had gone out there prior to the West moving. He remembers seeing 5 children. He also specifically remembers 4 boys playing and 1 boy was mad, kind of with his arms crossed. He ultimately identified Orson as being there. but he only saw 5 children at California City. Now the pest control individual, Joseph Karsham, he recalled 6 to 7 when he went in the home September 15th, but ultimately when they went out to the Chevy van because he wanted to spray the house, he saw 3 to 4 children walking out and 1 being carried out. Again, Maria Martinez, she was asked about whether or not she had seen Orrin and Orson from the date of moving to December 21st. When she was first interviewed, she didn't even know the names of Orrin and Orson. She said that she did not watch Orrin or Orson from September forward. And also, she told them about the time that she had visited October 10th and also some video calls. But when she was pressed on it, she ultimately says, I think they were there. I believe they were there. I can't be 100% sure because right there, I didn't see them. I didn't see their faces. They also asked the sister, Perla Martinez. And ultimately what she said through testimony is, and you'll hear her testimony in this case, she did have some video calls, but the camera moved around and she didn't really know who she was looking at or who was who. She does remember seeing Aiden specifically, but that's all she remembers. So again, the police are trying to develop, at any point, has anyone seen Orrin and Orson? I'm going to go through the timeline, a specific timeline of the move to California City. September 11th, that's when they got the keys from the realtor, Robert Dees. September 15th, that's when the pest control individual, first name Joseph, went to the house. September 17th, 2020, they went out to Cal City. And then I highlighted this date because it's going to become important in this case. September 18th, 2020, that's the day that Wanda West went out to Cal City to watch the boys so that Trezell and Jacqueline could move. Well, when she went out to California City to watch the boys, that did not include Orrin and Orson. That was only Adrian, Aiden, Devin, and Damien. September 18th, that's when Jacqueline and Trezell drive from California City to Bakersfield to pick up a U-Haul. Wanda West stays with the 4 boys. Again, Adrian, Aiden, Devin, and Damien. She had no sight of Orrin and Orson. She believed that they were at the grandmother's, Maria Martinez, in Bakersfield. And again, Maria Martinez will testify she did not watch Orrin and Orson. September 18th, they return. This is the U-Haul that they return in. The van itself stays in Bakersfield. Jacqueline and Trezell return to California City in this van. You'll hear testimony that it's a 2-seater. There is no space for children. There is no space for Orrin and Orson. There will be cell phone footage in this case, kind of give a sense of the trips back and forth, because it becomes important, their trips back and forth, because Wanda West helps them unload the vehicle, the U-Haul, helps them watch the kids, takes Trezell to McDonald's, so does these things, and at no point does she see Orrin and Orson over the weekend of the 18th to the 20th. During that weekend, Trezell and Jacqueline are back and forth to Bakersfield in the U-Haul, picking up items. And again, Wanda West believes that Orrin and Orson are at Maria Martinez. There's going to be a lot of video in this case, but listen to the video specific to what Jacqueline says about where Orrin and Orson are when they're moving. She says that Orrin and Orson are with her when they're moving. This is just showing some more back and forth between Bakersfield and California City. Ultimately, again, September 19th and 20th, Wanda and the 4 boys helped Trezell unload the U-Haul. Again, no sight of Orrin or Orson. On September 20th, Trezell and Wanda returned the U-Haul in California City. On September 20th, again, Trezell and Wanda come back to the house. Jacqueline, Trezell, Wanda, the 4 boys are all there. They hang out for a while. At no point is Orrin and Orson present. On that same day, Trezell and Wanda drive back to the apartments on Lotus Lane. Once they get there, Trezell gets in the van, drives out, gets on the freeway, and goes home. Again, at no point during this time are Orrin and Orson seen. You'll see through the evidence in this case that lines up directly with what Adrian said. the timeline when Orrin and Orson went missing. July 25th, 2020, this is a photo of Orrin West. This is the last known photo ever taken of Orrin. It's recovered from the cell phones that were seized in this case. This is the last known photo of Orson, taken in the apartment at Lotus Lane, July 25th, 2020. Now, during one of the interviews, and it'll be played for you here, Jacqueline West talks about how she talked to her kids about Orrin and Orson. She said, "I told them, pretend they're not here. Just act like they don't live here. Just go do your work." She talked about what she did with Orrin and Orson. "I always keep them separated. I keep them separated. I focus mainly on schooling while they're playing. They don't really play together, but they have played together. I just don't know." But that's essentially what happened to Orrin and Orson. They were in that home, but they were kept separate. And then ultimately, sometime in September, they were killed and have not been seen since then. I've spoke about it, there'll be a lot of surveillance footage we look at. There will be a lot of interviews that we look at. Interviews of Jacqueline, interviews of Trezell. A lot of details that we will be going over. Things that they said, things that changed. And ultimately, the answer to the question of where are the boys will be answered. It's that they're dead. And at the end of the case, I will ask you to return a verdict of guilty beyond a reasonable doubt as to Trezell and Jacqueline for the murders of Orrin and Orson West.
When Prosecutor Smith brought up the fact that these 4 adoptive children, only 2 of them were missing. Thankfully, the other 2 are not in the care of Trezell and Jackie anymore, obviously. 4 children, 2 sets of brothers there, paying $4,000 per month to the Wests. It made me think about the motivation for adopting these children and perhaps why they went missing. Was it really this altruistic type of endeavor that Trezell and Jackie's defense attorneys are trying to make it out to be? Or was it really about money, and did these kids just become too much for the couple to handle? I feel like this case is already won, but you can never be too certain. But if you keep studying the way the prosecutor is laying out his case, showing videos, this is the only time we'll get to see videos, opening statements, closing statements, and the jury's decision. Other than that, we have to rely on audio, and I've taken tons of notes, added onto KGET live tweets, but we will see the way the prosecutor is just laying out this case, step by step. All the people who did not see Orrin and Orson West prior to the date they were reported missing. He has so much evidence even in his opening statement, laying out all the neighbors he'll speak with, all their Nest and Ring doorbell footage that tracked different movements, what the neighbors saw, the way Trezell and Jackie acted, the things they were caught doing, trying to gaslight and manipulate their children into not talking, or to ask for lawyers, or trying to change their minds. When it comes to Mr. Hennessy, the defense attorney, you can compare just how lacking his opening statement is.
Because it's easier to charge them than for them to explain why they couldn't find them. They've been married 12 years in March. Trezell will explain, and you'll hear in the interview, that when he first met Jacqueline, her understanding of love and their love together changed his whole perspective on things. It changed how he saw religion. He goes into it with the detectives. That love manifested into a little family of 8. And they were proud of the life they had built and moved out to the desert and got themselves a little house. This is COVID times. Some people hoard toilet paper, some people drank and knit, and other people's kind of moved on from urban areas because they saw the system come to a halt. That is what the West did. They went out to Cal City to try to be self-reliant. And let's face it, out in Cal City, they are unique. They are a biracial family of 8 made up of couples of brothers that are also biracial. They are an artist and a producer. who are trying to be self-reliant out in Cal City, who homeschool their children, and yes, primarily make $4,000 a month to support that family of 8 for taking care of children none of us were taking care of. And this is suspicious to Cal City. And you can see that from the start of this investigation. This is all suspicious to them. And with uniqueness also comes oddness sometimes. And you can see in the interviews when they talk to Cal City, sometimes they say some odd things, but they are always forthright. They are always sharing everything with Cal City PD because they want to be removed as suspects so they can find their boys. And sometimes they say some things that are true, but Cal City doesn't want to hear. In the spirit of openness, Jackie explains sometimes she forgets their anniversary. That's a Trezell thing. Trezell explains it is easier and more hygienic to sit down when he pees. That is the level of openness they are giving Cal City PD so they can check them off and find their kids. They started adopting because they heard about brothers that get torn apart in the system. They didn't know family members could get separated in the system. And Trezell, working as a security guard, realizes all he's getting done is getting paid to stop homeless people from stealing food, and decides, you know what, why don't I spend my time trying to help kids? And when he gets there, he starts to realize there's not a lot of males in the system, let alone males of color, let alone black males who are going to be fathers to black children in the system. He tells this to detectives. That is why he got involved. But he also explains to the detective that once you get involved, after about 60 some odd kids come ripping in and out of your house, after a teenager puts hands on you in your own house, you start to feel different. You have to kind of compartmentalize. And Jacqueline says the same thing. And because of this, they love their children, but love that gets drugged through the system is a little bit different. Cal City doesn't like that. And they'll say it in the interview. And although they have no experience with adoption or fostering, they don't really like some of the answers they're getting. Trezell explains the reason why he got Oren and Orson and why he was so proud of them is they were 2 little black boys just like him. And he was going to be a father to them, and he was going to raise them and be there for them. And then he's in his backyard and they go missing. And now he's sitting here on trial. Because they can't answer where the boys went. And they can't account for this. This is the video as explained in the opening. We know up in here, this is not as good, the TV's gone, but my body would have blocked the TV. You're going to get a chance to see this. We'll go through this later. As we've heard, we're going to review all this footage. Up in here, we know that is where Mr. West is doing yard work. I'll start this. You know, this is getting around the time, right, the mark when we know. And we know that Mr. West turns the lights on once they've realized the children are missing. I want you to look right up here. You'll see some light, something going on right here. And keep paying attention because eventually whatever's causing that's going to show itself. Because Mr. West says once he knows it happened all so fast, he's telling officers he thinks it might be 3 minutes, which they don't like. So the light source is back, and now what's causing that reveals itself. That is a car going down 108, leaving the area. This is the West house. That's a car leaving the area about at the end of the block from their house. You will now notice we're in the time, Mr. Smith pointed out, the 6:20 where he leaves to start to begin that the boys are missing. And we're about a minute out from this light turning on. So, they can't explain that. I'm willing to bet most officers don't even know about that. And you'll see in the interviews, They think the 3-minute estimate he gives them is too small. They hear him talk about it. About a minute out from that car leaving, we know the light goes on when they've started to realize that they are not in the yard and they are not inside. It's about a minute and a half from when that car went by. Something else they don't have answers for. There's give or take 41 registered offenders in Cal City. That means 41 individuals we put on a list because they are a risk to children. They don't talk to any until January 1st. That's not the 22nd, the 23rd, the 24th, the 25th, the 26th, the 27th, the 28th, the 29th, the 30th, the 31st. I'm not going to put this down, but you know the first comes next. That's when they talk to sex offenders. And all of them know. They went to 4 houses. They talked to 2. One, they talked to the person's mom. And that apparently was enough for them. And then they talked to a roommate. The others, they don't have an answer for that. Before they ever do this, they get a call from someone named Hector Rodriguez. He tells them he's got information, he wants to talk to an agent, he's worried for his safety. Tells them you need to check a house in Blythe, but I need someone to talk to me. They check the house in Blythe. They don't ever contact them. Hector Rodriguez, with that same birth date, county who's been out of compliance since 2009. They don't talk to him. He went to them. Got glossed over a little bit, but there is, in the initial paperwork from CPS, when this is starting to develop, as well as in official filings, the definitive statement, there is video footage of the children walking down the street. And now everyone's like, well, you'll see them. No one really knows where that came from. No one knows who said it, why it's written so definitively. They'll tell you they wrote that, meaning that's like a suggestion of something they're hoping to find. It's pretty definitive. It's in a court filing. They won't be able to explain that. A woman in Texas called them.
Your Honor, you can get up the sidewalk.
That's fine.
Okay, we'll stop filming, we'll stop broadcasting, make sure you turn your microphone off, we'll just put the sidewalk.
Thank you, Your Honor. All right, let's continue. Texas, a woman calls and says around Christmas time she sees two little black boys in the neighborhood. She says eventually she meets them and she is told their names are Orrin and Orton. And a man corrects him and says, no, your name's Derek. That's never followed up on. Just also, they don't have answers for how inconsistent some of this investigation is. There will be cops that will say there's no diapers, but there is diapers. There will be officers that say there's no chalk, well, there is chalk. There will be officers that say there wasn't clothes, well, there is clothes. There will be officers that say there was no toothbrushes, there were toothbrushes. There will be some officers who rely on the fact that the dogs didn't smell the boys specifically. You will hear from the dog handler that the dog smells cadavers or humans. The dogs that were there were not trained to smell individuals specifically. And she'll tell you when she was there the first night, the dog couldn't do much because the area had so many people walking around through the yard, it was contaminated. And she'll tell you the only job they gave her was follow the route that Trezell's van took to see if the dog finds body parts. That's the first night. Also, the videos we will discuss about boys, the family coming or the family going, even by the officer's account, they can only identify 3 boys. There's issues with that footage. There's issues with these interviews. They're inconsistent. The boys are inconsistent from what they're saying. They contradict what adults that were in Cal City say. They retract things they've said. They've gone back on certain statements. They conflict with each other. And what you will see is interview techniques used by Officer Hansen is improper for children. And with Officer Hansen, it also extends to adults. That is a table. That is Miss West. That is his hand on her thigh. He never handled this investigation like she was the mother of missing sons. This was a tragic accident, is what the evidence will show. All right? They don't have an answer for it because it was tragic. But instead, Trezell is here on a murder charge. The bottom line is Cal City out the gate just never thought anyone would take 2 little black boys. That's why the investigation will look the way it did. This is Trezell West, this is Jacqueline West, and their 2 little boys are missing. Thank you.
Instead of truly attacking the facts, you notice he doesn't get up there and say, no, Orrin and Orson were seen right here, see, December 21st, walking down the street in this video evidence. Or here's a photo, here's a witness, here are 5 witnesses that saw the boys. No, you don't hear anything like that from him. What you hear is sort of this invented story that blames, Trezell being a black man and Jackie being a Hispanic woman, and them being this bohemian, artistic, lovely, so much in love couple. What does their love story have to do with missing children? I guess Mr. Hennessy is trying to paint the picture of a family so in love, so multiracial, moving out to Cal City. Their boys just happen to go missing out this heavy gate. No one sees them. Folks had not seen the boys prior to them being reported missing. When we get to day 3, we will talk about the nice sounding elderly lady, she calls herself Nosy, behind the West's home, saying she never saw kids in that backyard. Instead of Mr. Hennessy talking facts, saying, I have all these witnesses who spotted the boys, they were running off into the desert, or I have another witness who said he saw someone pick up the boys in a car. He has none of that. Mr. Hennessy, in his opening statements, spoke about this great love story between Trezell and Jackie, and they're so weird that Jackie forgets their anniversary. They're so strange that Trezell sits down to pee. The California city cops just have this vendetta against them for some reason, just because they're this in-love family and they're unique, and Cal City's never seen anything like it, and that's why Cal City just zeroed in on this couple, zeroed in on them unfairly, and that's the reason. Cal City can't find the boys, so they're blaming Trezell and Jackie. God bless lawyers, criminal defense attorneys, but I don't think I could do it. I do not think I could do the job. Everyone deserves due process. Everyone's innocent until proven guilty. But as you can see the layout in these opening statements, oh my goodness. Wow. So that's it for the opening statements. I've already talked about days 1 and 2 in my previous video. Next video I plan will be day 3. I want to cover a bunch of notes and let you know from the audio I caught everything that happened on day 3. Thankfully, we'll have a break this week. The West trial won't be back until April 10th, which is good because it'll give me time to focus on the Letitia Stout trial, which more people want to see. So for now, soak up all these opening statements and let it be an exercise, a study in presenting a great case as a prosecutor, as opposed to kind of coming up with a story as a defense attorney. In my opinion, that's what it looks like. Unfortunately, thankfully, fortunately, he probably doesn't have much else to go on. Even though this is a nobody case, or nobodies as it were, I think the prosecution stands an excellent chance of conviction in this case. I want to stop it here so this video will not be so long, like that it's like a movie. And my plan is to get into covering day 3 in a separate video, and then we'll be caught up to speed and ready to go with the Stout trial. 1 Corinthians 13:13, and now these 3 remain, faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love. Let me know what you thought of each attorney's presentation and how effective it is. It shouldn't matter, but it does matter the way it's presented. And you don't have to get up there and be all entertaining and an actor and all that. But I really like the way this prosecution had his facts. He had his visual representations of photos and audio and everything right there to go. Let's see eventually what the jury thinks. Thanks for watching.